There's a quiet and persistent feeling that you are a project in a state of perpetual renovation. Your life often feels like a construction site. There's the constant noise of self-analysis, the dust of old habits being demolished, and the scaffolding of new disciplines being erected. And you are both the demanding foreman, holding the blueprint of a better you, and the exhausted laborer tasked with the endless work. You work so hard on this project of self-actualization. You read the books, you listen to the advice, you confront your demons. You fix one perceived flaw only to have your attention immediately drawn to the next. You learn to be more productive and then chastise yourself for not being more present. You learn to be more assertive only to feel guilty for not being more compassionate. The finish line, that imagined future moment where you will finally be healed, whole, and acceptable, is a horizon that recedes with every step you take. We are taught that this is a noble pursuit. The journey of becoming is the great, heroic narrative of our culture. We are supposed to be constantly evolving, optimizing, and upgrading ourselves into a superior version. The idea of simply stopping, of just being as you are, feels like failure. It feels like stagnation or complacency. Peace, we are told, is a reward to be earned after the work is finally done. But the secret truth of this endless renovation is its profound exhaustion. You are tired. Tired of the constant self-monitoring. Tired of measuring yourself against a blueprint of a person who doesn't exist. Tired of the low-grade, persistent feeling that you are not quite there yet. The very striving for a future peace has become the destroyer of your present peace. The effort to fix yourself has become its own special kind of suffering. You are running a marathon towards a perfected version of yourself, believing that rest and acceptance are the prizes waiting at the finish line. But what if the project is endless by its very design? What if the striving is not the path to peace, but the very thing that bars the door? What if the person you are trying so hard to become is preventing you from having the simple permission to be? That final question, the one that pits the act of becoming against the state of being, feels like pulling a thread that could unravel your entire worldview. Our culture is built upon the gospel of self-improvement. We believe we are here to work on ourselves, to sand down our rough edges, to climb a ladder towards a better version of who we are. To suggest that this very effort is the problem can sound like a dangerous invitation to give up. And yet, this was the central, playful, and most profound critique offered by the philosopher Alan Watts. He looked at the sincere, anxious striving of the modern person and saw a beautifully tragic game, a dog chasing its own tail with immense determination. He saw that we were trying to solve the bootstrap problem, sincerely attempting to lift ourselves up out of our own anxiety, without realizing our own anxious striving is what keeps us on the ground. Watts would pose a deceptively simple question. Who, exactly, is this I that is trying to improve the self? The answer, of course, is you. But if this you, this consciousness that pushes, plans, and criticizes is the very one you have deemed flawed and in need of improvement, how can it be trusted to be the improver? He would say it's like trying to wash a muddy hand with another muddy hand. You can scrub for a lifetime, but you will only make a mess. A truly anxious mind cannot, through the action of anxious effort, create genuine peace. A grasping ego cannot, through acts of grasping, achieve a state of letting go. The very nature of the tool is incompatible with the result you desire. This is the hidden logic behind your exhaustion. The foreman of your inner construction site is the problem. You have been trying to build a quiet, peaceful home, but the foreman is an anxious, dissatisfied tyrant. The project was rigged from the start. Every ounce of effort you put into becoming better is filtered through the very dissatisfaction you are trying to escape. You have been trying to put out a fire with gasoline. Seeing this is the beginning of liberation. It is not a new strategy to help you become better, faster. It is the startling realization that the entire project of becoming was a game you could never win. And therefore, it is a game you can finally have permission to stop playing. Let's look at the object of this endless renovation project, the self you are trying so hard to improve. We imagine this self as a concrete thing, like a house that can be remodeled or a statue that can be perfected. But Alan Watts would invite you to try and find this self. Where is it? When you look for it, what do you find? You find thoughts, feelings, sensations, memories. All of them are constantly changing, flowing. The self you are trying to fix is not a solid entity. It is a concept, a story, a phantom woven out of memory and language. Trying to improve this conceptual self is like trying to teach your shadow how to dance. You can expend enormous energy, but the shadow will only ever mimic your own frantic movements. The project is absurd because the object of the renovation isn't actually there. The striving to improve the self is the very activity that creates the illusion that there is a solid self to be improved. So, if becoming is a futile chase, what does it mean to be? It does not mean to stagnate or to become a passive victim of your own worst impulses. It means to trust a deeper and more profound intelligence that is already at work within you. Watts would often point to the Taoist principle of Ziren, which means of itself, so, or spontaneity. It refers to the way a tree grows, the way a cloud moves, the way your own heart beats. A tree doesn't try to grow. It doesn't have a 5-year plan for its branches. It simply grows in accordance with its own nature and its environment. You have been taught to distrust this natural, spontaneous intelligence within yourself. You have been told that you must control, manage, and force it into a better shape. To be is to relax that forceful control and to trust the process. It is to realize that the same intelligence that knows how to grow a forest from acorns is also living you. This leads to the great paradox of change, a secret known to every wise tradition. The only way to experience real, lasting change is to stop trying to change. This sounds nonsensical to the striving mind, but it is a profound psychological truth. Your flaws, your anxieties, your unwanted habits, you have been treating them like enemies in a war. Your resistance, your hatred of them, is what gives them their power. It is like trying to smooth a wrinkled piece of paper with an iron fist. The more you press, the more you fight, the deeper the creases become. Acceptance is the release of that pressure. When you truly accept a part of yourself, you have been fighting your anxiety. For example, you stop adding a second layer of anxiety, which is the anxiety about being anxious. You stop feeding the problem with the energy of your own resistance. The initial feeling, now allowed to exist without condemnation, is free to pass through you like a cloud through the sky, instead of becoming a permanent storm you are at war with. You don't become better by fighting your bad side. You become whole by withdrawing your opposition to it. So what does this look like in a human life? To let go of the project of becoming is not to become a perfect, serene saint. That is just another, more subtle blueprint for the foreman to follow. It is instead to become radically, authentically human. It means that when you feel anger, you are simply angry, without the secondary layer of judging yourself for not being a peaceful person. When you feel lazy, you are simply lazy, without the self-criticism for not being productive enough. You cease trying to live up to an image of yourself. You are not the weather reporter, anxiously forecasting and judging the weather. You are the sky, which has room for all of it. The sunshine of your virtues and the storm clouds of your flaws. The sky doesn't fight the storm. It allows the storm to be a storm. And because it allows it, the storm can pass. This is the permission to be. It is not the achievement of a permanent state of bliss, but the release from the exhausting, impossible task of trying to be anything other than what you, in this moment, are. And so, the construction site falls silent. The frantic noise of the foreman shouting orders, the endless banging of the hammer of self-criticism, the dust of constant renovation, it all begins to settle. And in the quiet, you can see the truth. The project was a fiction. There was no flawed building to be fixed. There was only ever a living, breathing being, pretending to be a problem. Here is the radical permission you may have been waiting for. Your entire life, you are allowed to stop. You are invited to abandon the project of becoming a better person, and to simply allow yourself to be the person you already are. You can tear up the blueprints. You can let the scaffolding rust. You are released from the exhausting obligation to be a work in progress. You are, in this moment, complete. Feel this liberation in your body. It is the feeling of the laborer finally setting down their heavy tools at the end of an impossibly long day. It is the release of the breath you were holding while you strained to be better. The constant low-grade tension of self-monitoring can dissolve because there is no longer a project to manage. There is only a life to be lived. This does not mean you will be perfect. It means you are free from the tyranny of perfection. You will still feel anger. You will still have moments of doubt. You will still be lazy. But you will no longer see these as moral failures that require immediate correction. They are simply the weather of your inner world, passing through the vast and accepting sky of your being. When you stop fighting yourself, you find you have an enormous amount of energy to simply deal with life as it comes. This is the great secret. When you abandon the project of becoming kind, you find that kindness flows more naturally. When you stop trying to be creative, you find that creativity emerges spontaneously. When you are no longer trying to force yourself into the mold of a good person, you are free to respond to this moment with all of the intelligence and wisdom of your whole organism. You finally begin to trust yourself, not because you have become perfect, but because you have given up the absurd game of pretending you ever could be. This is the profound rest that Alan Watts spoke of. It is the peace that is found not in victory, but in the surrender of an unnecessary war. It is the discovery that you were never broken, only convinced that you were. And the final liberating truth is this: the only self worth having is the one you stop trying to build.